Alright, welcome folks to another one of my ZBrush tutorials, and today's tutorial is going to be how to make a fork in ZBrush. So to get things started off, we're going to select the Z-Sphere tool. We're going to drop a Z-Sphere to our canvas, and we're going to hit edit, which is T for the keyboard shortcut. We're going to show our floor so we can pick how we want to edit hold down the shift key, and that will align us with the y-axis up. We'll go to the transform. We're going to activate symmetry. We're going to activate the Z, and then we're going to add Z-spheres to this, and we drag it out, hold down the shift key. That will give us a nice uniform size. Hit the A key to check our mesh before we really get started, and we can hit the Alt key and look back a little bit. We're going to go to our Move tool. We're going to stretch this thing out a little bit. Check our mesh again. Nice straight mesh. So to get started, we're going to start with the head of the fork. We're going to temporarily turn off our symmetry. We're going to slide over, reorient our coordinates there. We want to put some tie-ins here, so we want to get the we want to activate symmetry along the x-axis. So we'll go to the transform X and go to X. So that we can drag out two Z-spheres here on this Z-sphere, and we're going to hit it down the uniform. Hold down the shift key to make sure they're uniformly sized. And we're going to drag out some of this a little bit. So as you see here, we got kind of the starting point here. But like I say, as I've done the other videos, I want to get as much of the composition or the shape of the fork as we can before we really start doing a heavy mesh. So I'm going to exaggerate things a little bit for the time being. We're going to exaggerate the size of this tines. I'm going to add some more Z-spheres. And what I'm going to make my tines off these 4 Z-spheres, and possibly even the middle. I think I've run through this a couple of times, so I've rehearsed this quite a bit. So hopefully we'll have a really nice looking fork here. We'll do the hold down the shift key. We'll move them forward a little bit, and we'll add some more Z-spheres to these two. Hold down the shift key. Move these up. Move up. Okay. Move not like that. We'll make the adjustments later here. We'll get the overall shape, like I said. Move this in a little bit. Move these in a little bit. Kind of looking like a pitchfork here. Try to get them fairly straight. And I'm going to add an extra tine in the middle. Let's say, and I've been through this several times. It's been a little tricky getting the shape just right on this fork, so we'll add that other tine there. We'll go back to our symmetry for a little bit, and we'll move things around. Move this back a little bit, and move these in, move this one, kind of get them straight there. So we've got our tines, and we want to get them kind of level. So trying to level them up here a little bit. Now, and we'll add some length to our handle. Now, what I want to do now is I want to kind of adjust the shape just a little bit. have a nice smooth looking fork here. So we got basically a good shape to start with. Now I want to be able to bend my tines a little bit, so I'll add a couple more Z-spheres in there. And while we have our symmetry initiated or set, I'm gonna go to transform a little bit here. I'll raise these tines up because the fork kind of bends up a little bit. I kind of studied one here the other day. So we've got to start there. We got a 5-tine fork. I want to add a couple more Z-spheres on here. A fork forks are kind of made where they kind of sit down. They're kind of somewhat the body of the fork kind of we'll add another Z-sphere there. Oh, got some more. Didn't mean to do that. We'll push this one down a bit. Oh, on scale. It'll move. I'll push that one down. So we got kind of a base shape there. And the fork kind of sits like that. We'll add some more length. Push these around a little bit. So we got a base shape there. Now, what I want to do is we want to look at our mesh real quick. Yeah, our mesh is pretty good. So now we want to maybe scale these tines so they come to a point, and kind of scale down, get a pointy shape there, and kind of a gradual pointy size there. Maybe on these a little bit. So I'm going to continue working along here, refining our shape of our tines. So we'll take, we'll move that middle one back up again, so it's sitting with the rest of our tines. And we'll just ease that up a little bit. Now, so we've got our fork going, and another thing about the fork, the end of it is kind of flared out, so we're going to scale up that last Z-sphere there, and right where it comes to, we'll add another Z-sphere here, because right before it gets to the end of the fork, it's kind of reduced in size there. It's a little bit tempered. We'll check our mesh. We've got a nice straight mesh. And well, I talk about polygroups a lot, so I got auto groups on. So I noticed this the other day. When you go to your polyframe, all these colors indicate these pre-assigned polygroups. Now we're going to use some of these polygroups to refine the shape of our fork. But before we go to commit to a mesh, we're going to go back into our Z-sphere. We're going to narrow down the shape of this a little bit. We're going to get things a little bit closer in, so we get more of a nicer fork shape there. Maybe pull in our tines a little bit. We're trying to do this to kind of reduce the amount of unnecessary sculpting we might have to do toward the end when we're finishing up. That's the way I'm trying to work here. Trying to get the shape finalized before we actually get down to doing our final sculpting. try to shape things up beforehand. We're going to get this out. So that's starting to look, once we got this one tine here, it needs to be adjusted. So I'm just going to look at this mesh again. Yeah, maybe we should lengthen the hand a little bit. Let's see. So proportion wise we're looking pretty good for our fork. Let's check our mesh one more time. So we pretty much got the shape of our fork worked out. And we also got its contours, which I was saying is kind of important, because the way the fork sits when it's on the table is kind of important, or very important, because it kind of sits on the table like that. If you look at a fork from the side, you'll notice that about the fork. So anyway, so take a look at our mesh. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about is I had trouble when I ran through this a couple times. This portion right here is where an actual fork has a lot of flattening there, and there's a big shape before you actually go out to your tines. So this shape is kind of being a central point in the video, the shaping of this. But before we really get started, we're going to make an adaptive skin. We're going to make the lowest possible geometry, and we're going to work on our adaptive skin before we really go anywhere with our higher density meshes. And I want to maybe adjust the polygroups somewhat. We can do that while we're here. So I want to kind of work out where I'm going to be with this. Is a part that's really where the important details are. So we're going to hold down the shift control key, and we're going to get our lasso, and we're going to select some poly meshes here, and we're going to do some grouping. I mean some poly grouping here. So I want to kind of select this particular part of our mesh. We're going to assign this as a group by itself. So I'm going to go to our polygroups. We're going to say group visible. So now we got that all as one mesh. We might have a little problem here, but we'll make adjustments as we go. And we have one little mesh here that kind of bugs me a little bit. Let me step back. I want to make sure I grab that particular part of the mesh, and we'll go back here, follow along. We want to make sure we get this one particular part of the mesh. Oh, I know what it's going on there. Got to turn off my transform. That helps. Okay, here we go again. So we're going to make sure we grab this big end mesh and get my selection to work here. Okay, we gotta go. We'll get this eventually. I'll see what the problem is. We need to back up a little bit. We'll hit the F key. Yep. We need to zoom in. We'll do it like this. So we're going to make this, with the exception of that. This is fairly complicated mesh we're trying to grab here. Now that's what I want. That's what I want. So not quite though. Not quite. Maybe we should reverse it here. Okay, what we'll do here is we'll try it again. No, that's not it. Okay, we're going to go with this. We're going to group this for the time being. That will give us some more control. And so let's see what we've got here. So that's going to be our portion that we're going to really pay a lot of attention to here. But anyway, I want to go on some more important things here. I want to flatten our handle before we're going to go back to our rectangular lasso, and I see we got a little piece there, so it's going to be symmetrical. Okay. So we're going to mask that. Hold down the control key. We're going to reveal the rest of our mesh. We're going to hide our polyframe, and we're going to do some, we're going to blur the mask a little bit. And so we're going to inverse it because we want to flatten our handle. We want to blur it some, like that. And now I find that it's a little easier sometimes to work with our deformation tools. So we got this on the y-axis, and I'm going to use the size, and I'm going to size it along the y-axis. That's going to allow us to flatten out our handle. And as always, I emphasize we got our mask blurred here, so we get a gradual transition there. And that's one of the properties we want. So we've got that established. Now we'll inverse the mesh and do a little flattening on the fork tines themselves. And we'll go to our deformation. We'll size it down. The only disadvantage here is we're not getting our contour, but I think we can straighten that out as we sculpt later on. So we're going to go with that. We're going to clear our mask. Now, I want to go back and work on this area here. So we'll reveal this poly mesh that we selected previously. And I'm going to use a similar technique here as we press down Shift Control. Now this mesh here is I really want to work on. I haven't got it selected quite like I want it, but we're going to work on it because it looks fairly symmetrical. There are some pieces of mesh that are a little bit irregular there, but what I want to do is only go to the use the move tool here. And we want to reinitialize our symmetry along the x-axis. So we're going to pull on this, and let's see. Before I pull on it, let's see what kind of effect we're going to have on the overall geometry. And then we'll go to. Okay, so what I actually want to do is back up a little bit, and we want to mask this as we did before. Now we're going to reveal the mesh again, and we're going to do a blurred mask so I can do this, get this deformation that I want to do. I want it to be very gradual, so we invert it. So now we can go ahead and pull some shape into this fork here. For finer dining. So I walked through this several times I wanted to give you guys a really good tutorial on some of the things you can do with your deformations and your masking and your polygroups. So I've really worked hard at trying to make this the best tutorial I can. So the only problem is it looks like we got a good base shape worked out. We maybe do some additional sculpting. Let's pull this out a little bit more. Oh, now we got that flat area before it turns into the forks tines. So anyway, we're going to clear that. Now we got it's fairly rough looking, but we're working at a very low density mesh, and it looks like we're coming along pretty good there. I can't say much for the tines themselves. I think we can, with our move tool though, we can turn the symmetry off. We can actually pull some of these out, reduce the size of our brush a little bit, and we can do some detailed pulling out of these tines. Do one at a time here. So we got a good base fork worked out there. Now I'm going to add some geometry to this thing. Well, actually, I'm going to turn it into a poly mesh. Commit it to our poly mesh. Now we're going to add one more level of geometry, and we're going to do some more sculpting here. It looks like this fork come out a lot better than once I practiced on it earlier. But I want to try to get some of this contour back by using the transform tool. And I think I talked about this earlier. There's a feature in the transform tool. Get it stretched out here. I'll demonstrate it again. Of course, I want to stretch it out. We kind of, as always like to emphasize, you want to get your transform tool kind of more or less in the center where you want to do your transformations. And we got the move selected, so let's see, was it Alt? I think the Alt key. Yeah, the Alt key. You go into where you want to do your transformation, hold it down, and you can raise the fork up a little bit. Now what I want to see if I can get my bend and my tines a little more like they actually are. Hold down the Alt key. I think we're going to have to do the transformation more along here. No, that's not working. Oh, it has to be in the middle one. Okay. So yeah, we can bend our fork up there a little bit. And like I say, we haven't got a lot of. We're only at our second level of geometry, for our mesh geometry there. So we can do some additional sculpting here. I'm going to try to do. I was exploring some new tools earlier. I've been using the move tool with the symmetry, and I'm going to go to the standard brush for just a little bit and increase the size of it a little bit. I want to kind of press down on this a little bit, but not too much. Go down here, lower our intensity, hold down the Alt key to kind of press on the a little bit more there, like 11. Do a little sculpting here, kind of flatten this out. As you know, they call this stuff flatware, so a little bit more. Hold down the Alt key. I want to introduce this other tool here also while I'm at it. This is the I was looking at this tool. This is a Trimadpative tool, and what I want to do is I want to flatten my handle a little bit. And so I've been using this, and let's just see. We got real high intensity. I want to lower it, maybe down to 10 or 11. And it kind of does a flattening thing. Maybe that's a little too much. Yeah, that is too much. We'll back it up again. We'll go down to 5. This is kind of an interesting tool because it allows you to do some flattening. And we got a little bit of flattening there. We'll do a little flattening on the back. This is the Trimadpative, and you can notice it's got a little flat face on it. We'll use it on the back here a little bit. Maybe flatten our tines out. Maybe we can change the size of that brush. Looks like I might have accidentally. Okay, well, just real lightly before we really start doing our final details. So let's back up. So what we're going to do, we're going to add some more geometry. Divide once again. Do a little more sculpting with our Trimadpative. Flatten the tines out just a tad. So we're just slowly kind of sculpting this thing, not getting real radical. Because I believe once we put a metallic material on this, we'll have a good passable fork. Now, on the back, I'm going to switch back to the standard brush for a minute. Because I want to put some, let's see, intensity. That brush a little bit bigger. Yep. I'll lower that intensity a little bit. Hold down the Alt key because we want to kind of put a little bit of a depressive feature in the back. Like that. I'm going to add some more geometry. And we can smooth this out. I see we got some maybe some cross mesh there of some sort. But, so we've got a fairly decent looking fork there. I must say, I'm going to add some more geometry. We can always smooth this out. And there's this clay polish feature. I've played with this a little bit. If you use this kind of lightly, you can smooth some of this stuff out. So you just hit the clay polish while you're in your geometry tab there. And it'll smooth out some stuff. There's a little bit of smoothing there. And I'll go back and you'll see what I mean. This area here where we got this crisscross, you can smooth it out a little bit. And it does it overall. So we did it for the whole geometry. So our fork is fairly smooth there. And I want to go back and do a little bit more of this from the, add some concavity to the back of our fork with the standard tool. So, and maybe add a little convexity to the top side. And adjust our draw size a little bit. That's too much. I'll take it down to 11. Just kind of lightly give it a little something there. Maybe you do a little more polishing here with our brush, flatten that out a little bit. So I'm going to call that done. I want to keep the videos fairly short, but that'll give you a good idea of one way you can go about making a fork. So I'm going to put a nice material on this. I've been using the silver foil here, That looks like a fork. Put the perspective on it. And take the floor out temporarily, and we'll render our fork for you. And we'll change that background. Click it here. So there's your fork, and so thank you so much for viewing my tutorials. I'm going to maybe create some more stuff here, but I wanted to get this one out, and we'll go ahead and render this one. This is a little more on the sculpting, but you got a combination of polygroups, blurring your mask, selecting your polygroups. I've covered quite a few things here, so I hope this will be helpful in your artistic adventures with ZBrush. And I just can't say enough about ZBrush or the things you can do with it. So anyway, we're going to render this, and there we go with the fork. And thank you so much for viewing. I'll be doing some follow-up YouTube videos on ZBrush. And so thanks again, once again, for listening and watching. And we'll see you later.